Hello and welcome to the Week 15 edition of This Week at the Park. I am Brian Tinsman from Redskins.com, joined by Larry Michael, voice of the Redskins, and Tarek El-Bashir from CSNWashington.com. How you guys doing this morning?
Good.
Good. All right, so right from the top, got the big announcement yesterday that Robert Griffin III would sit the rest of the season. He will be replaced by Kirk Cousins in the starting lineup. Will actually move to being the third inactive quarterback, making Rex Grossman your backup quarterback now. Sexy Rexy is back. Given the record, given the 38 sacks, given the 24 sacks in the last 5 games and all the hits that he's taken along the way, can't really be that big of a surprise coming off an ACL surgery. What did you think of the news, Larry?
Well, I had said several weeks ago that it won't be long until people are going to be talking about shutting Robert down for the rest of the year to protect his health. But the way this week is unfolded, it's kind of like from Sunday morning when that report came out before that snowstorm, well, I guess during the snowstorm at that time, from that moment, kind of things were teetering, and that report kind of pushed things into a spiral that we've seen over the last couple of days, continuing to churn. So what was a logical move, I think, under the atmosphere that we're currently under, has been scrutinized, obviously. Even that move, which seemed like a logical move.
Yeah. I mean, I'm a little confused by the fact that just 10, 14 days ago, Shanahan stood before us and said, the important thing for Robert down the stretch is to get these reps. This is an invaluable experience. It's going to make him a better player next year. Mm-hmm. And then the report comes out Sunday, and like you said, everything starts to teeter, and you don't know what direction things are going to go. And now all of a sudden he's getting put in bubble wrap for the remainder of the season. Something happened there. Something doesn't quite jive, and I'm not sure exactly what happened.
Well, add to that, of course, you had a game in the snow and the ice, which you would have thought would be a dangerous game.
Absolutely.
For anybody. And then, though, look back to 2-3 games ago when I was in the locker room after a game, and Robert had taken quite a pounding, and I looked up, and here comes Robert's father into the locker room, which drew a lot of attention, a lot of criticism, but the reality, as Robert said at that press conference, is he had taken a pretty strong beating, and his dad was coming in to see how he was doing. So he was taking a beating. That is true.
A lot of strange stuff.
So you try to get your mind around it, and I would say this, that we're 3-10. Obviously, whether people are pointing fingers in the building, I don't believe they are. But outside the building, there's a lot of people pointing fingers because they really want to know where things are headed. And I did think it is a logical move to not have Robert play these last 3 games to preserve his health. But with everything else around it, it's been a very weird time.
Can I throw a hypothetical out there?
Oh, yeah. Okay.
Go right ahead.
What if Kirk Cousins looks great and wins 2 or maybe wins 3 games?
Well, I'm going to ask Phil. There's a bumper sticker right up there with the Hogettes up there, and if Phil can get a shot of that, it's right up there. There's a bumper sticker up there, so you can barely see it, but it says, I like Sonny. So I don't know if we're headed in that direction. I like both these guys, but, and again, it's a weird situation because Kansas City is a very good defense.
Right.
They were punishing. Atlanta allows 4.6 a carry.
Yep.
They've given up 1,700 plus yards running the football.
Yep.
Indoor game.
It's easier for them to look good.
Sterile atmosphere. Losing team. They've got nothing to play for. So
the point I was going to make is, what does the locker room then start to feel? Does this undercut Griffin's ability to lead going forward if they see another quarterback come in and succeed in a similar system behind the same line?
You're gonna have some a different looking roster here next year, though. Without a doubt, there's going to be a different looking roster. So it's going to be an interesting 3 weeks, that's for sure.
Yeah.
And you're also not talking about a spot start against the Cleveland Browns or even a spot start this year against the Atlanta Falcons. You're talking about a 3-game stretch where you're going to have to see him.
And he knows it, too.
Right, and you're going to have to see him against the Giants in New York. You're going to have to see him against Dallas in Washington. Those are not easy games. Even if this game, plays out in his favor, I don't know that that's necessarily a given that he will look like world beater in 3 games.
Well, Kirk Cousins is a very impressive individual. I knew that when I met him at the Senior Bowl a few years ago. You could just see this guy as a born leader. Yep. And then Robert has all this charisma, and he's coming off Rookie of the Year performance, albeit this season
Sure.
He's coming off that injury, and I know he had worked so hard to get ready for the year and to want to play all 16 games. So I think if there is a hurt in Robert, it's the fact that he wasn't able to finish the season, wasn't allowed to finish the season, however you want to put it, didn't get a chance to play all 16 games.
Now, the guy who will be starting on Sunday actually spoke to the media yesterday. They all spoke to the media yesterday. But Kirk Cousins talked a little bit about what his role is in the next week, next 3 weeks. Let's hear what he had to say.
Could you give us your reaction to being named a starter for Sunday?
Just need to get ready to go. Need to have a good week of preparation. And need to just continue doing what I've been doing and let things take care of themselves.
Can you take us through how this played out today? Who broke the news? Were you and Robert together? Was it done separately? Just give us an idea of how all this played out over the last couple hours.
Yeah, it wasn't anything dramatic. I was just told by the coaches that I'd be going this week. And if that changes anything, then there's something wrong with me, because all these weeks my preparation should be as if I'm the starter. So certainly in human nature you're going to have a heightened sense of urgency now that you know, but it shouldn't change anything that I'm doing this week to get ready.
Now, the last time we saw Kirk in the starting lineup, as we mentioned, in Cleveland, he finished the day actually with a year high for the Redskins in passing yards, 329 passing yards, 26 for 37. He had a slow start in that game. You know, he ended up with 2 touchdowns, but he actually started out the game 1 for 6 for 9 yards and an interception.
Yep.
I mean, that right there kind of shows you that it is, in his role coming off the bench, it's hard to insert guys into the lineup and expect a spark right away. Are we going to see that? What are some reasonable expectations for Kirk, starting in Atlanta, but for the 3-game stretch, Tarek?
Well, I think I like the point that Larry made. You know, it's good that he's going to get a weak defense right off the bat. I think it's also good that he got those series towards the end of last game, so he's not coming in completely cold. I think, you know, a little bit of rhythm was established there late in the last game. That's going to help him out a lot. You know, I think that, like you said, the fact that he was able to rally the troops in Cleveland last year speaks to his leadership and his ability to, within himself, kind of, you know, press the reset button when things aren't going well, and that's what all NFL quarterbacks need to do, and turn things around. I think there's a strong possibility he'll play well, and I think another point that Pierre Garçon made yesterday in the locker room was this could just kind of give, as bad as everyone feels for RG3, this could give everyone just kind of that little bit of a boost, you know, kind of like changing a goalie in hockey. It's not necessarily because the guy was not playing
that
well.
Hockey analogy. There
It just kind of shakes things up, you know.
Well, and also, you know, it's unlike coming in a relief role at the end of the game, or it's unlike coming in against Baltimore when Robert went down and he had to step in. Kirk knows he's starting. He's going to prepare as a starter all week. He said he prepares as a starter anyway, but come on. If you know you're starting, you're going to have that much different attention to detail, maybe that little bit more. And I know the one thing here, despite the atmosphere here, and one thing that has been talked about over the course of the last 2 years is the character guys that are on this football team. And I don't think you can deny that. I don't think they're going to go work less than they've been working. And I think they're going to want to win this game.
I would agree with you. Shanahan talked to...
I'm picking the Redskins, by the way.
There you go.
Shock.
Picking the Redskins. How are those picks going?
Oh, man.
Oh, sorry. I didn't
We'll talk about it tomorrow.
Last year, we talked a little bit about going into that Cleveland game. What are we going to see differently out of this offense? What schematic differences does a guy like Kirk Cousins bring than a guy like Robert? Of course, we saw a more traditional offense in a lot more I formation, things like that. Didn't see as much of the zone read. Do you expect to see that?
As much? I don't think we saw any.
No, there might have been one play, and
you won't see. I don't think you're going to see any difference, except I think you're going to see Alfred Morris get the ball more against this defense, against the team
rushing.
And you know, we're so engulfed in what's happening here. You know, Asante Samuel, great corner, wonders where he'll be next year. He carries a big cap number, and so Atlanta's going to have to make some changes. I mean, Tony Gonzalez said he's retiring after this year. Could he reconsider and come back? I don't know if he wants to leave like that. Matt Ryan, it's very similar. You look at Matt Ryan's numbers, and you look at Robert Griffin III's numbers, and if you kind of did whatever mathematics, they're kind of similar regression from last year. I mean, Robert has more than double the interceptions that he had last year, and Ryan had a very efficient year last year. He's got his quarterback rating's 89. It's not what you're expecting out of him.
Don't forget
He
Roddy.
has no one to throw the ball to, though.
Yeah, don't forget Roddy White isn't the threat because of
No,
the
and
injuries that
Julio
they
Jones
were-
hasn't been
out.
there. Harry Douglas is their leading receiver right
Harry
now.
Douglas.
Harry
Like
Douglas.
900 something
yes.
yards. Yeah.
That's remarkable. Well, coming up in segment number 2, we're going to get more into the Atlanta Falcons matchup. Stay tuned.
Who are you going to pick?
All right, Redskins fans, segment number 2. Remember, apply for your Redskins Extra Point MasterCard. Start earning 2 points for every dollar spent at RedskinsTeamStore.com this holiday season. Well, we will get back into Robert a little bit, but believe it or not, other news did happen yesterday. We just didn't talk about it. The team's injury report came out. Nobody talked about that during the press conference. Got some bad news on Jordan Reed. He did not practice yesterday.
Not looking good.
But got some good news in Darrell Young. He did practice fully. Hamstrings can be finicky. You never know really until Sunday whether that's going to play out or not. But you know, which one of these guys, when you consider the problems that they've had converting third downs with a guy like Jordan Reed who was so successful at that,
Right.
then the problems that they've had in the running attack over the last 3 games without Darrell Young, which one of these guys is really the more key matchup?
Well, that's a tough call.
Yeah.
What do you think?
I'm going to go with Jordan
I'm
Reed.
going opposite whatever
Okay.
you say.
You're starting to do that a
Make
lot.
a case. Make a case.
Yeah, I'm going to go with Jordan Reed because, like you said, this team had discovered what didn't work last year on third downs, and they were very efficient for a long stretch. But you know what? I mean, Jordan Reed is a big part of that equation. 30 of his 45 receptions were for first downs. I mean, there was definitely a lot of chemistry between him and Robert Griffin. And you know what? With this concussion now, it's been, 3 games?
Yeah.
And he didn't practice on Wednesday. You're starting to wonder if he's another guy who is a candidate to get shut down for the remainder of the season. And that, is a big void to fill on that offense.
Great point. I don't know if I would single one guy out over the other. They're very valuable in different ways. And for Alfred Morris, obviously having a guy like Darrell Young in front of you makes a big difference. But having a receiver like Jordan Reed to be able to go downfield, up the seam, to be able to hit him.
Right.
We've seen such great flashes from Jordan Reed this year. And unfortunately, I mean, it's been kind of a banged up year for him. Remember during the offseason, he didn't participate fully in the offseason program.
Quad, knee, foot.
Yeah, I remember at training camp, he had to take some time off. And so you hope this is an indication of how his career is going to go. You'd like to see him out there, and he could be an outstanding Pro Bowl player. Yeah. But I think more immediately with this opposition and with Kirk Cousins in the game, I think Darrell Young, to me, is I don't want to say one guy's more important than the other, but they could use Darrell Young in this ball game because you know they're going to run the football.
You know, people talk a lot about the lack of carries for Morris the past few games. Yeah, some of that was Robert pulling the ball in those zone reads and decided to keep it himself because the defense was keying on Morris.
Sure.
But at the same time, I think one reason that they ran so many zone reads as opposed to just more traditional running plays for Morris is because they didn't have a fullback in them. I mean, you know, I don't want to pile on here, but I remember a couple of times where Evan Royster completely whiffed on a block. I think Logan Paulson might have missed one as well. I mean, Darrell Young doesn't miss those blocks. He understands that position, and he paves the way for Alfred Morris, no doubt about it.
The Redskins have been fortunate this year in terms of season-ending injuries. They haven't had very many, but this kind of a nagging hamstring for Darrell Young. What difference would he have made against the Giants, who were keen on Alfred Morris in that game? And the lack of having Jordan Reed. I mean, Logan Paulson's just playing his heart out. and he's playing injured. He's been playing injured the whole second half of the
It's
season.
amazing he hasn't missed any time.
He got hurt in Oakland.
Yeah.
I'm telling you what, he's been very impressive
tough.
and
He's
very
tough.
tough, good hands. I think he's a great guy to have on your football team.
Absolutely.
And then, of course, the lack of seeing Fred Davis out there, getting him the ball. He had the big opportunity. He's had a couple of opportunities and really hasn't grabbed them.
Dropped the ball literally.
Yeah, literally. And so, however his season ends, those 3 games, and these guys they do have pride. And you hear them say in the locker room, Tark, that they want to put good tape out there. Sure. And so even if you know you're not going to be here, this is pro football. You get paid to play. But just to not see a lot of opportunities go Fred's way, you don't have that weapon with Jordan Reed. Now that you don't have, who else is going to do what he does? Fred could, but he's not out there to do it.
Right.
So.
And that's why we've actually seen Logan Paulson actually become more of a receiving threat in the last couple games. He's caught a touchdown in the past 2 games. He has
Great
3
spike.
touchdowns that he's
Great
never
spike.
had. Oh my gosh.
The two-hander.
Maybe one of the best.
I'm not sure I've ever seen that.
But I mean, the fingertips catch in the snow and then
Sure.
taking the header
Toe tap,
off the goalpost there. That was a pretty remarkable play.
Old school.
Now with Alfred Morris, you finally saw him crack 1,000 yards. It seemed like he was on the cusp of that for.
He only had 31
3
yards
games.
last game, so
Right.
We
well, he only
wondering-
needed 4 for.
We were
1,000.
wondering
More
if
than
he'd
you
get
went
it.
for
Yeah.
that, yeah.
So he's a guy certainly if.
Happy birthday, Alfred Morris. It's his birthday today.
Did not know that.
Yeah.
24.
He's awful young. I don't know how
I don't
old
even know if
he is.
he's that old.
He's a pretty young guy.
Now, if he gets Darrell Young back, and even really if he doesn't, this Falcons run defense, as we mentioned, not good. They're the 30th ranked in the league. The Redskins have the 2nd ranked rush offense. Now, a lot of that has to do with Robert as well, but Alfred has had a great year. That has to be something that's in the game plan to exploit that, especially with Kirk.
It's want to. It's want to from the defense. I think one of the big keys to this game is which team is going to really play for pride,
Right.
and who's going to be watching that scoreboard, waiting for that clock to hit 0, and let's move on to the next one. I think
agree
that's
with
the
that.
bottom line.
I would agree with that. And I don't know if we're going to get to this in a moment, but the Falcons aren't scoring either.
No.
So this is the kind of game where a 5-game
That's how
losing
most
streak-
3 and 10 teams
yeah,
are, though.
Yeah, I mean, but it's bad. I mean,
Yeah.
it's like in the 17s, during this 1-5 stretch for them. This is the kind of game where if the Redskins are prepared and they really want to, get a win and finish the season out strong, the opportunity is there. They haven't been, world beaters at home either. So the Georgia Dome is not what it's been in recent years.
Now, actually, Robert did speak yesterday. It was more than just a statement. He took a number of questions. And one of the things that he said that really stood out to me is that he will be supportive of Kirk Cousins.
Yep.
He was very clear about that. He promised the media, made his pledge that he would be a vocal supporter on the sideline. Let's hear what he had to say to the media yesterday.
I'm sure everybody knows by now, Coach decided to shut me down for the rest of the season. So, we talked. I talked to Coach. He talked to me about it. And I expressed my desire to play. Of course, I want to be out there and finish the season with my guys, see it through. And he explained to me his reasoning. And at the end of the day, Coach's decision is what we go with, and that's what it's always been. So, I have to do that. I have to sit here and do whatever I can to help Kirk, do whatever I can to help this team win, and that's what we got to do for the next 3 weeks and going into the offseason.
Do you think you're being benched to protect you for the offseason? Do you believe the reasoning?
At this point, I just got to leave it up to Coach, like it always is. In times like these, you just got to lean on what you've been taught in life. And my parents, being 2 military parents, have taught me to respect authority, and I have to respect what Coach says. I can't do anything about it. All I can do is try to help this team win games, and that's what I'm going to do. So anything aside from that, I can't bother myself with thinking about those kind of things.
Did you?
Now, the support there seems genuine going in both directions. He says that he'll support Kirk. Kirk made very clear at the end of his press conference that this is Robert's team. It will be Robert's team going into the offseason, and that it is his job to be a good backup at this point. You expect to hear that kind of stuff, especially from the charismatic guys, but how does that help the locker room to know that these guys they're not going to be dogging each other?
Come on. You really expect them to be dogging
No, I
each other?
don't. That's why I said
what do you expect? And well done, young man RG3, to stand up
Agreed.
there as tough as that situation was for him. And no, He's not the same bubbly, joking. It's been a very difficult year for him. It's a very disappointing situation for him, but he handled it with class, and I liked what he said, and I think both these guys are, hey, they're both young guys, and Robert was drafted very highly, a lot given up for Robert Griffin III, and Kirk Cousins is no dummy. He knows where the thing is stacked up. So no surprise to me.
You know, Robert showed a lot of maturity in class, like you said. I mean, he very easily could have gone up there and been petulant and, you know, been Robert from training camp where, you know, he was a bit of a loose cannon and probably said some things he wishes he could take back, things that stirred the pot a little bit, but he didn't. You know, he was about as reserved as we've ever seen him. You know, I always refer to him as ebullient. Yesterday, it was like he was going to a funeral. It was very somber for him.
Yes.
I mean, you can tell it hurt, but at the same time, I do believe that he's genuine. And look, I'm going to do what, you know, at this point, the decision's made. It's not like he can come back next. They've said you are done for the year. I think he needs to recognize that. I think he does recognize that, and is going to do whatever is asked of him.
And it actually takes this storyline away for the rest of the season. It's not. We're not going to have this conversation every single week.
This is not taking the storyline away. I disagree. You're going to hear about this all through the rest of the next 2 weeks, win, lose, or draw. I doubt there's going to be a draw. You might want to draw. I don't know with your pro picks, but it's not going away.
It's not going away, but the decision is not going to be every single week.
But the question.
Well, what if someone gets? What if one of the quarterbacks gets hurt? Anybody think about that? What's going to happen if one of the two quarterbacks, meaning Rex,
Joshua
or
Morgan.
Kirk,
What's Pat White doing?
just saying.
We got more to talk about in segment 3. Stay tuned.
Good question. Where is Pat White?
Welcome back to segment number 3 of This Week at the Park. Looking at matchups this week, we got Pierre Garçon, who also cracked 1,000 yards this past week. Was certainly on pace to break Art Monk's single-season reception record. But he's, you know, certainly with the quarterback change, is that something that is going to impact him a lot? They seemed to have rapport last year when Kirk came into the game against Baltimore, caught that game-winning touchdown. You know, at what point, you know, is that going to be a problem for him, or are we going to see pretty much the same old Pierre?
I think Pierre is one of the few players in that locker room that does not care who is throwing him the ball. Just get it to him, get it to him in the right spots, and he'll make plays. I think the relationship between Garçon and Griffin was strained at some points during the season. I thought that they had worked out whatever the problem was. You know, it probably came from Garçon running his mouth a little bit too much, you know, when it came to RG3's knee and him getting tired of answering questions over and over about his quarterback's knee.
Right.
But I think they got back on the same page. But like I said, you know, Kirk Cousins has a cannon of an arm. If he gets the ball to him a couple times early in that game, you're going to see that confidence grow between those two, and I think he could put up some decent numbers.
I mean, the thing when I look at Pierre Garçon this year, I mean, he's such a passionate guy. He wants to win, physical receiver. We see how he plays. Very emotional guy on the field, very cool guy off the field. You don't see him kind of bubbly around and just, you know, he's kind of a guy who always keeps his focus. He's on pace for 109 catches, which would break Art Monk's record.
By 2?
By 3.
By 3.
And he's already over 1,000 yards, so he is having a tremendous year, but 3 touchdowns.
Oh.
Just 3 touchdowns. So that really kind of epitomizes the way the season's gone. You can say, well, the Redskins' rushing attack is number 2 in the NFL, but they have 3 wins. They can't score. They haven't been able to score. So It's been a very odd situation, and for Pierre Garçon, a weird breakout type of year without any touchdowns, really.
Yeah.
And it also seems like he's not a guy who is used at all in the red zone. I can't remember the last red zone touchdown that he has. It seems like they go to their bigger targets, which is smart there. But I guess that's probably indicative of both problem scoring in the red zone and also the lack of the big play downfield that we saw from him last year. You know, is that something that Kirk might be able to fire up a little bit in the last 3 games?
You'd hope so, because you know, when you talk about the Redskins offense, like you said, outstanding rushing the ball still, you know, 2 years in a row, but the lack of the big play.
Yep.
I mean, it was lacking early on in the season. It's really dropped off a cliff in recent games. I mean, I can count probably on 2 fingers how many times Griffin threw the ball over 20 yards for a completion. And you know, I'm not sure that's actually Garçon's game, but he's a guy who should be averaging more than 12 to 13 yards per reception. You know, he can be a deep threat. He's that versatile.
Well, his big plays last year came after the catch,
did.
trying to split the defense. He's got a different gear he gets into, but he's been double teamed most of the year, and that speaks to who's on the opposite side,
Which has been a revolving door.
and what kind of coverage is rolling over there. And he is the prime target every time the Redskins take the field. So he has had to fight through those double teams, and he's still having a great year.
Now, on the opposite sideline, we're going to see one of the all-time greats in Tony Gonzalez, who might be in his last hurrah. This could be it for him.
Shouldn't have come back.
Shouldn't have come back. Should have gone out like he did. But, you know,
You
against
should have kept that crown, too.
It's not over, my friend.
for his career against Washington, though, 4-0, 25 receptions, 265 yards, 3 touchdowns. I mean, he has had big games against Washington, especially last year. That was one of his finest. And, you know, how do the Redskins stop him? He's injured, but they've had their own problems in the secondary.
Tough matchup.
It is. I mean, you know, the Skins have struggled all year defending big, physical tight ends with soft hands. And I think what's going to help them is the fact that he's not 100%. The fact that Ryan has also struggled to get him the ball. You know, what made him so good last year was they really spread defenses very thin because you had to defend Julio Jones. You had to defend Roddy White. You know, there was so much out there. And that kind of left Tony to his own devices. I mean, he was able to find some space in the middle and get some yards. And, you know, without Julio and the threat of Roddy White, I think the Redskins will be able to assign a safety to him. You know, maybe, you know, I do not want to see linebackers on him because he can still do damage. But, you know, I'd like to see Brandon Merriweather step up and, you know, get that assignment. And, you know, if you can keep him to under 75 yards, and I think a lot of teams have this year, you'll have a pretty good chance of beating the Falcons.
This game's all about 1-2, like I said before. At 3-10, both teams are just going to play out these last 3 games. There's not anything really on the line except for their futures. That's a lot. I'm really interested to see how D'Angelo Hall comes into this game. Last time in Atlanta, he picked a fight with the entire Atlanta bench. And none other
head coach as well.
With the head coach, and none other than Albert Haynesworth was the guy that came to his aid on that sideline. So I know
He's got your back.
D. Hall's had a great year. I think he is going to go to the Pro Bowl. He's taken on the top receivers every week, and maybe you'll see him on Gonzalez. You never know.
He might be the only Pro Bowler on the team, or at least on.
Garçon is probably he's probably deserving, and Alfred Morris is deserving. And you'll see some guys go get hurt along the way, some playoff contenders.
I'm talking about real Pro Bowlers.
Well, I think Alfred
I know
Morris.
what you're saying.
Hey, no sophomore slump for Alfred in a very tough year for the Redskins. He has just been workmanlike.
His yards per carry has been outstanding. You know, it's not necessarily his fault that he's not going for 1,600 yards again.
He's had a good year.
You know, the amount with what he's been given, he has maximized that potential.
I agree.
We don't have nearly enough time to discuss this, but what do you need to see from the special teams unit in the last 3 games? What do they need to establish going into next year?
Wow. You know what?
How about not give up any touchdowns?
That'd be great.
Yeah,
How about
start.
no negative plays? No negative plays, because on special teams, negative plays are compounded. Kick return, block punt, block field goal, touchdown, kickoff return for touchdown. I mean, just what about one game where there's no botched plays?
How about no rolled snaps to the punter?
That's one I forgot. Yeah. So,
Find a kick returner.
that
find
was
a
the
punt
strangest
returner.
one of the year.
yeah,
I
but
think.
no, have a clean game. If they have a clean game, you got a fighting shot.
We will see. This is the battle of the 3 and 10s coming up on Sunday. Remember to tune in Monday morning for the Monday Morning Redskins Roundup, recapping everything that happened in this Sunday's game. It's been a pleasure, guys. For Larry, for Tarek, I am Brian Tinsman. This has been This Week at the Park. We'll see you next week.